Brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Wa afdalu salati wa tammu taslim. Ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Al-Fatih lima ughliq. Wa khat lima sabaq. Nasib al-haq bil-haq. Wa hadi ila siratillahi mustaqim. Wa ala alihi haqqa qadrihi al-azim. Wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-'ali al-azim. First of all, I'd like to wish each and every one of you a belated Eid al-Fitr. Kullu aam wa bi khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from you and from your loved ones all of your fasting, all of your sadaqah, all of your zakah, all of your prayers, and all of your righteous deeds that you did during the month of Ramadan. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from you all those who've made the intention of fasting the 6 days of this month Shawwal, following up the fasting of the month of Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us and from you. Ameen. My brothers and sisters, Islam, before I bring on my colleague, Sister Amy, as we discuss the recent lawsuit that was filed in relationship to the amendment of the Elliott-Larsen Act, I would like each and every one of you who are watching this right now or in its entirety to share this very important informational session, to share it on your WhatsApp groups, to share it with those in the state of Michigan who you have contacts with, to share it on your social media, on your the link on your Facebook right now, as well as on Twitter, and your other social media outlets, as we are giving you a very important update. I'm going to bring on my colleague, Sister Amy, on right now. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Amy.
Wa alaikum assalam, Brother Dawud.
So before I turn over to Sister Amy, and she will go into some of the nuts and bolts of the recent lawsuit that was filed against Calvin University. This live that we are doing right now serves a few purposes, and there is a call to action at the end, because as a advocacy organization for religious rights, we just don't talk about problems. We try to bring forth solutions and ways in which our constituents, as well as Michiganians of goodwill who aren't Muslims, how they can get involved and to help support what we are talking about. But before the call of action, for individuals, there will be, and I'm kind of working in reverse order, there also will be instructions that Sister Amy will give and highlight about the importance of religious-based institutions, especially in the Muslim community, and the importance for them reaching out to us that we can look over your paperwork, which she will touch on exactly what that means. But the thing that I want to stress going forward, and then I'll make some comments at the end, and those of you who are in the viewing audience, if you have any questions pertaining specifically to this topic, you can raise them. But let me say that we at CAIR Michigan forecasted that shortly after the amendment of the Elliott-Larsen Act that had included LGBTQ+, in which there were not robust religious language for protections, we forecasted that there would be a lawsuit against a religious institution in regards to this. And there were some people who were activists, as well as some politicians, who talked about we didn't know what we were talking about, or we were just blowing smoke, or we were fear-mongering, or was overblown. Well, as I said then, that there probably was already a lawsuit written before it actually went into effect. And by golly, we were right. We were right. Why? Because this is easy to forecast. So we know that shortly after such legislations passed historically, not just about this issue, but other issues, that there is lawsuits written up or plaintiffs that are looked at, potential plaintiffs, to actually test the law. So we knew that there would be a lawsuit. So for those people who said that, oh, that small little language or sentence, that language that was in the amendment, that was going to be sufficient to protect religious organizations, and that we were overblown. Well, we knew that that wasn't the case, and it's proved ourselves to be true. And there's a way that these individuals, if they are to be humble, there's a way to fix the problem, right? Because we still try to have husnul dhan, to have a good opinion that maybe people make calculations and we're told improper information, be it from other activists. Maybe they got some bad legal advice, including maybe some improper legal advice from the state attorney general themselves, right? There's a way to fix things, right? Let me also say, religiously speaking, and we have to be frank because we are a faith-based organization. This just isn't a Dunyawi issue or a political issue, right? Be especially for those who are community organizers, activists, or even politicians who are Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly commands in the Quran, "La takunu alladhina zalamu fatamassakahumun nar." Do not incline yourselves towards those who are outwardly doing and promoting wrong openly. We're not talking about in private affairs. They are outwardly and openly in promoting wrongdoing and doing wrongdoing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not incline towards them, lest you shall touch the fire with them. Right? This is what's called al-wa'id. This is a divine threat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives in the Quran. The Quran is filled of al-wa'd wal-wa'id. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives divine promises in which those who do right and fulfill the commands and are seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's countenance, he says, khalidina fiha. They will get what? They will get Jannah and they will reside in there forever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also talks about people, including Muslims, who will go to Nar, right? And this is what's also called a divine threat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives in the command. So in this particular ayat and many ayat in the Quran that we heard during Taraweeh prayer and we recited in the month of Ramadan in regards to this matter. So before we go into the actual nuts and bolts that Amy is going to, I would just say to those, ittaqullah, right? Ittaqullah, like be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fear the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I say this, and I'm reminding this of myself. Our own personal wrongdoings, our own inclinations is one thing, but when we openly aid and abet wrongdoing, or if we marginalize our own sacred rights as Muslims, this is a whole different matter. This is a very grave matter. It's a very serious thing, right? And I'm saying this, as your brother who is concerned for you as I'm concerned for myself and concerned for my family. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sister Amy. She's going to go into some of the description about the lawsuit that was just filed against Calvin University as it relates to Elliott-Larsen Act and the issue of LGBTQ+.
All right, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Brother Dawood. Like Brother Dawood said, this was very easy for us to forecast. And I'd actually go one step farther than what Brother Dawood said, because not only did we forecast that a lawsuit was coming, but we really talked about the ways in which this would impact the Muslim community through its educational services and through our private religious schools. And that's exactly what happened. We said that this would happen. Brother Dawood made mention about when we have teachers who are teaching non-religious studies, how that could be a basis for challenging our religious expression within our Islamic schools. And that's exactly what happened in this case. So just to give a little background about what the case is about, the case was filed about a week ago against a university that's on the west side of the state of Michigan. It is a Reformed Christian university. It's incorporated as a Reformed Christian university, and it calls itself a religious institution. It teaches secular studies, much like some of the universities that we have here, for instance, like University of Detroit Mercy and University of Detroit Mercy School of Law, where I went to school, they give a rounded education. But their mission and their bylaws and their incorporation paperwork clearly indicate that they are providing a education from a viewpoint of the Reformed Christian Church. So every thought sort of with that in mind, with that theology behind it, and with that and facing that viewpoint. A professor who had been working there for some time in his own lawsuit admits that he is not a Reformed Christian, and he found many of the Reformed Christian viewpoints and values and teachings to be at odds with his own personal belief system and his own personal values system. He also admits that he was open with his students in criticizing the viewpoint of the Reformed Christian Church in his studies. He was a social work teacher, and he was tasked with, according to his own lawsuit, teaching his social work classes from a Reformed Christian perspective, and he knew that was the job duty when he went in. He particularly found offensive the school's teachings as it pertained to the nature of the LGBTQ community and their lifestyle. And he, in fact, performed in an LGBTQ wedding of two women at the while he was teaching there. And not only did he do that, the other person who he performed a wedding for was also a teacher there, who resigned shortly after the wedding. Likely, if you read the lawsuit, it's likely because of her objection to the stance of the church as it pertained to the validity of her marriage. So he is openly flouting in his job duties the ideology, the theology, the religious beliefs and teachings of the Reformed Christian Church. He sort of indicates in his lawsuit that he doesn't believe that he is required to proselytize for the church. I don't think that that's the standard. I think the standard is, currently the standard is that you have to uphold the values of the religious institution that you're teaching at. So he admits throughout his complaint that he doesn't uphold those values, that he is vocal about it, that other students and teachers have cheered him on for his vocality and challenging the church's position on certain issues, especially as it relates to the LGBTQ community. And it's very important to keep in mind when we're looking at this lawsuit that all of the events that happened in this lawsuit, including what the teacher calls his termination, and whether it's a termination or not is a different issue. He was under a 2-year contract that was not renewed. The church simply refused to renew his contract at the end of its natural term. And he's taking issue with that, calling it a termination. He wasn't a tenured teacher. He was a contract at-will professor. So they refused to renew his contract after his 2-year term in 2021. So we're talking 2 full years prior to the institution of the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Amendment. However, when he files this lawsuit, he substantially relies on the amendment in the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act that was just passed this year. He mentions it by name. He talks about it. He relies very heavily on it, despite the fact that this lawsuit happened, or the incidents in the lawsuit happened well before that amendment was ever enacted, and also well before the Supreme Court had ruled on whether or not the LGBTQ community was protected under the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. So it's interesting to see that something that happened over 2 years ago is now being utilized to test the boundaries of the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. And we kind of knew this would happen. So what he's saying is that the church is allowed to have their views, and the church is actually allowed to teach their views. And that he doesn't take issue with the fact that the church is allowed to teach social work from a Christian Reform perspective. What he takes issue with is the fact that he himself, who chose to be engaged in employment there, was forced to follow the guidelines of the church in its teaching. So this lawsuit challenges the fundamental nature of why we have religious institutions and religious educational institutions in private schools. The reason that many people send their children to other individuals who are older in the university setting choose to go to a private religious school is because they want that religious experience. They want to incorporate all aspects of the religion in their education and in their teaching, so that they can live through their doctrine, they can relive through their religious beliefs, and they can, really live their religious expression in a way that encompasses the whole person, right? That's why we send our children to private Islamic schools. And what he's saying with this lawsuit is, now that the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act has been expanded, he's saying that you no longer have the right to, in your religious school, to teach religious teachings and uphold religious values that don't comport with his individual belief system or his individual expression. He's challenging the fundamental right of the religious institution to teach religion and to incorporate religion into its environment and into its culture. The lawsuit is very, very clear that that's what's happening. It's also very clear that he set this up in a way to really push the boundaries, to see where the Civil Rights Act will take the community and whether or not there could be a curtailing of religious freedoms as it pertains in religious expression, in education, as it pertains to the conflict that arises between religious expression and the rights of the LGBTQ community. So he's saying that you basically can keep your religion only in religious classes, that any outward expression of religion in the education system is going to be impermissible. And that's really what this lawsuit is challenging. Whether or not a Christian reform college, university can have religion in its teachings outside of the actual theological teachings. It's very troubling. It's not surprising that this happened less than 3 months after it was enacted. We know that they've probably been watching the expansion come out. They've been waiting to file the suit. There's no reason why they would have filed it now. They could have filed suit anytime this year. They could have filed suit anytime in 2021, following 180 days after the Michigan Department of Civil Rights began investigating any claims of discrimination. But they didn't. They waited, and they waited specifically for this expansion. They waited specifically to be ready to file the suit, to test the boundaries, to test how far they can push it. And this is something that should be of concern to our religious institutions, especially our private religious schools. So we are concerned about this. We are going to be watching this lawsuit as it plays out. I think that there are some problems with the lawsuit, but it's going to be expensive. The university is going to pay money, and they're going to have to defend this lawsuit to once again solidify their own religious rights. And that's what we've been saying for months was going to happen. And all it would have taken to prevent this lawsuit is some language identifying and recognizing the protected nature of our religious institutions. And if we talk about some of the detractors, as Brother Dowd calls them, who came out and criticized CAIR-Michigan, or who came out and said sort of that we got it wrong, they spoke directly to this issue. They quoted a provision in the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act that they claim protected our religious institutions and our religious schools by name. They cited a provision of the act that they said would prevent this type of lawsuit. And clearly the provision of the act that they cited has not prevented this type of lawsuit, because here we are 2.5 months later with a lawsuit pending in state court against a religious institution. This is why it's very important. We had spoken before when we were talking about the enactment of the act, when we gave our last Facebook Live about this issue, about the importance of ensuring that our bylaws, because we had also spoken about a case in New York where a Jewish seminary was targeted because their bylaws weren't strong enough, right? Their bylaws that were incorporated 100 years ago, when the issue of this conflict of rights couldn't even be perceived, right? When there was no understanding that they were going to be required by the New York law to expressly state that they were a religious institution, or they were going to face lawsuit. we talked about the weakness of that, and how that institution was capable of being targeted and had their rights kind of stripped away from them, had their religious nature of their facilities stripped away from them because they didn't, solidify their bylaws 100 years ago when they were first enacted. And we had encouraged every religious institution, especially our religious Islamic schools, to come to us and let us review their bylaws and make sure that they're protected as a religious institution, as an express religious institution. And this lawsuit kind of outlines why it's more important, because even in this lawsuit, there's a recognition by the plaintiff, by the professor whose contract was not renewed, that indeed Calvin identified itself as a religious institution and expressly stated that they were going to be teaching from a Reformed Christian perspective. And he knew what he was getting into. He knew that his job was to teach social work from that perspective, and he refused to do that. And here he is with a lawsuit. So the best defense that the university has is that they are an express religious institution, and that they put right in their articles of incorporation and their mission statement that they were going to be teaching from this perspective, and that all of their professors have in their contract that they were going to be teaching with this perspective in mind, and that there was a system in place for, if you didn't agree with it, what you were supposed to do. He didn't follow that system. He didn't do anything. He flouted it, and now he's suing based on his own belief system, despite the fact that he knew what was expected of him, and the school did nothing wrong in this case. They put everybody on notice of exactly what they were doing. So we want to make sure that our religious institutions and our Islamic schools have put everybody on notice that, hey, we are an educational institution that is teaching from a holistic Islamic approach. Every aspect of what we're doing is going to encompass Islamic teachings, whether it's our math curriculum, whether it's our science curriculum, whether it's English or art. We are teaching and we are incorporating Islam throughout all of our curriculum. And it's important to make sure that we have our documents in case, because in our documents in order, because this is what happened to Calvin. This is what we said would happen. And this is, was really, really easy to predict. And this is one lawsuit on the west side of the state. This is not the only lawsuit that's likely in the works. We've heard from some other people that they're facing issues, that there are some other institutions that might be facing potential lawsuits as it pertains to employment matters similar to this one. And the lawsuits have been filed or have been threatened. So this is something that is moving forward at a very rapid pace, and it's something that we could have prevented had we been able to get express language enshrining that in our legislation. So I think Brother Dow was going to talk a little bit now about where do we go from here, what our next steps look like, and kind of what's going to happen as a result of this lawsuit.
Thank you, Sister Amy. And we will try to be brief to respect the viewers' time. But again, if you have any questions relating specifically to this topic, not whether you've been harassed in the airport by customs or if the FBI came to you, that's another discussion. Or what's going on at Wayne State University right now, which we're dealing with that, or Bloomfield Hills School. We can discuss those later, or you can contact our office. So in regards to this specific information situation, number one, Islamic institutions, those of you who are watching, not just masajid, but it could be schools, social services, or a Muslim-based institution. Outside of that, we made a list, and we're going to be reaching out to some organizations, and perhaps we have missed a few, but you can also proactively contact our office, email us, or call our office. And if you'd like for us to review your bylaws and articles of incorporation, as Sister Amy talked about, which may hopefully give you some potential protection if this goes to court. It won't stop you 100% from being sued, especially since these amendments, this amendment has been added to the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. As Sister Amy mentioned, this guy could have filed that lawsuit over a year ago. Like, he literally waited until the amendments came into law and then invoked it in a lawsuit, which shows you this was strategic. He could have done it a couple of years ago, right? But it was, they waited. That's why we said this was strategic, right? So we need to review your bylaws. The second thing is that we do plan on reaching out to some state senators and state representatives to add on additional language to Elliott-Larsen, which we called for before. Now that some of them who maybe didn't know better or underestimated or didn't see the potential harm, now that they see what's going on, there is a way of them making things right. So we have on our end our planned outreach, right? Legislative outreach. At the same time, the voices of constituents are very important and maybe even more important than ours. So again, watch this video, share it. You can share it with your elected officials, but to contact your state senators and your state representatives and ask them to support legislation to strengthen Elliott-Larsen for more robust religious protections. It can be done. Laws are amended. I mean, this was amended. As you know, the initial Elliott-Larsen Act, by the way, was passed specifically dealing with race and ethnicity. So the initial Elliott-Larsen Act was answering anti-Black racism. Then later on, other things, gender got added on later, right? And disabilities got added on later. But initially, it just was dealing with race and ethnicity, right? Now LGBTQ plus is added on. Okay, well, the language that was in the other 22 states that add on LGBTQ protections that more robustly protected people of faith and religious institutions, that can be added on to Michigan's now. So just because it wasn't added on, and we believe it was deliberate by some why it was not added on, but there are others. There's a if I can use, there's a way of making tauba. There's a way of like making things right in this regard. And so we as constituents are asking you to reach out to those representatives that you've had contact with. And again, you can share with them this video, including those state representatives who are Muslims, especially since I invoked the Quran and the language of our deen. The other thing I would say is that, again, we at CAIR Michigan, and I'm saying this only because it's true, right? We are the only Islamically based, Islamically oriented advocacy organization in the state of Michigan who is unapologetically tackling these issues of religious rights, challenging not just people on the right, but on the left too, right? And we have a large task, so we need your dua, and we also need your financial contributions. We are not bought out. There's a saying, "Who funds you runs you." We're not funded from outside the community by any far right-wing group, nor are we getting any foundation money and large grant money from any leftist or far left organization or any sort of operative group affiliated with the Democratic Party, right? We are funded by neither. And in order to do our work and to stand for your rights, for your religious rights according to the Maqasid Sharia and according to your First Amendment rights, we are unbought, we are unpaid for, and this requires you as community members, in order for us to keep our independence and maintain what we are doing. We need the support of the believers, morally and monetarily. Besides, of course, most importantly, we need the support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we believe that we are on the right side of this particular issue. And we believe that with Allah's permission, we will be victorious, if not in the dunya and the akhirah. In yasumkumullah fala ghaliba lakum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if Allah grants you assistance, then none can defeat you. And we believe this with certitude, with 100% certainty, with yaqeen. And if the whole world turned against us and we are in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he's with us, it doesn't matter. And I say this with all with all conviction, and I believe that Sister Amy holds this exact same belief that I'm articulating right now. So this is how you can support my brothers and sisters in Islam. And with that, we are always open. Again, please share this video on your social media, share it in your WhatsApp groups, and let us respectfully contact our elected officials and hold those people accountable that represent us, whether we voted for them or not, whether we gave them a financial contribution or not. They are civil servants and they work for the people. And if they're Muslims, we also remind them that they are accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Yawm al-Hisab, on the day of reckoning, in which every atom's weight of good shall be seen and every atom's weight of fault and supporting mischief shall also be seen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as he promises and said in his clear book in the Quran. And with that, we conclude, my brothers and sisters. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم.